So you're saying that someone in the 30 under 30 could be could be sued for potentially fraud? What is this?
Are you suggesting that Elizabeth Holmes, that Sam Bankman-Fried, that Carolyn Ellis, and now Charlie Javis were all 30 under 30?
Dare you, Oren, make these insinuations?
You've made it to Not Billable, the Lawtrades podcast that brings you bite-sized legal and business news updates, full event replays, and conversations with legal pros about what's going on behind the scenes every week. Stop the clock, put the timesheet down. It's time to get started.
Hey everybody, I'm Oren Peleg, back with your legal news update, joined as always by Law Traders extraordinaire Matt Margolis. Matt, how you doing, man?
You gonna make me say it? Every time they listen.
Every time.
Someone's gonna listen to this and be like, we get the bit. We understand the bit, but we still fall for it. So I'm living the dream every week.
We are so committed to this bit that I still want to see the mugs that you have planned. And I'm sure people would be buying them if we made them available.
I've got these like ridiculous mugs I've already been making, and I can only expect the smile some people will have for seeing the living the dream. Because the question is, you're like, is it ironic? Is it unironic? Is he really living the dream? You'll never know. Tune in next week to find out. Or not. I don't know. It's unclear.
It's my secret hope that it's completely sincere, because I'd be heartbroken otherwise. So.
I got you, man. I got you.
All right. All right. So what are we talking about this week? So first of all, the Winklevoss twins are back. Back in litigation. Not something I thought I'd be even talking about or hearing since 2008 or whenever that was. But this time it's over crypto matters, which very apropos, very of the moment.
Oh yeah.
Another thing we're talking about is JPMorgan falling prey to quite a ridiculous scam. And also some ex-Twitter employees are fighting over their severance pay, which they're claiming they didn't get. It's a whole mess. Some of the smaller stories we'll talk about is a new copyright court venue, which is a pretty interesting thing that started recently. And more scammers, this time going after tech workers, which is becoming another increasingly popular thing. So let's start with the Winklevoss twins, or if you're a fan of the social network like myself, the Winklevi. They had a crypto exchange called Gemini. And one of the things that Gemini was doing was, if you're an investor or you're just kind of using the exchange, you were depositing your money or your crypto on Gemini, you could take advantage of a product that they were calling Gemini Earn. Basically, what Gemini Earn was doing was the Winklevoss twins were taking advantage of an arbitrage situation through another crypto company. This one was Barry Silbert's company called the Digital Currency Group. It's very complicated, but they were taking their depositors' money, putting it into something called Genesis, which would then make its own money through this arbitrage situation. Gemini would give you quote-unquote interest from that based on how much they would make, and Gemini would keep the rest. Now, that is a securities product that they were offering, and it was not registered with the SEC. So now the SEC is investigating them for this. Meanwhile, Genesis has frozen the $900 million that Gemini was putting into Genesis. So the Winklevoss twins are getting flack from both sides here. It's a big mess. It's once again been kind of kicked off by the FTX collapse.
Yep.
Crypto is in the middle of a really, really messy situation.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, listen, if you're the SEC or the DOJ, you are much more inclined to step in and really take a regulatory stance on these things, right? You're really saying now these are securities, which I think I'm not gonna deter, right? I'm not gonna say right now, but it seems at least SEC has good basis to say they are securities. They probably are securities, right? Again, I'm not making a legal opinion. You're listening to this for fun. Anyways.
To deposit money with somebody and then to earn interest, yes, sounds like a security to me.
Well, think about it like a stock, right? I mean, it's stock is the perfect example of a security. So it's certainly what it looks like. And securities have to be registered when you're selling securities. But especially now when there's been so much fraud in this market, we're talking about the FTX issue. Celsius was the implosion of Celsius is a good example. Terracoin is an even horrifying, more on point example of what I'm talking about. And this is just what you're going to see. You see the SEC finally taking a hard stance like they do with traditional finance, with traditional banking, with that industry, with securities, right, with stocks. It's good to see. I mean, granted, here I'm not entirely familiar with the situation or what the Winklevosses are offering, but it is good to see that the SEC is like, all right, pump the brakes. We're actually going to do something here. We're going to get really involved in crypto in order to really make sure that the market is clean.
But this all feels too little too late. I mean, this is $900 million of some 300 and whatever investors that's already frozen. Why are they stepping in now? Shouldn't they have stepped in a year ago, 2 years ago? Why are we hearing about this stuff now?
I say arguably things are probably moving a lot faster now because FTX is in the news, right? I would say that you're going to see much more government enforcement now in 2023 than you did in early 2022. So that's probably why you're seeing much more of a hard stance and regulatory action, enforcement action, because after everything that has happened over the last few months, no one is stopping. No one is going to be like, all right, we'll wait on this one. We'll see what happens here. And granted, it may be a little bit later in time, but it doesn't matter. They're going to go for it now because there's definitely much more pressure to do so.
Much more pressure, and these are all investigations by the SEC. We're still waiting on regulations to be handed down from Congress and from other agencies, right?
That is going to be quite a fight. I imagine right now you probably have a bunch of lobbyists that are working behind the scenes to make sure that the interest of their clients, right, whatever exchanges, crypto offering companies, some DeFi startups, whatever these folks are, making sure that their interests are protected. That maybe they're regulating because they're going to have to regulate, but not enough to hurt my client or to phase my client out of existence because of the regulations are too tight. So I expect we have a little bit more time on the regulations. I'm sure it's a bit of a fight internally, but expect it soon. Definitely very soon.
Would it be safe to assume that there are some companies right now that are both being investigated by the SEC and lobbying regulations?
That I don't know. That I don't know if I want to speculate, but I will say that most are probably utilizing lawyers, government affairs professionals in the market. Like I at least as a smart business person, you're taking advantage of such. You're hiring at least folks that are familiar with the SEC, familiar with elected officials that are writing the laws, making sure that at least you're in the know and knowing what's coming out of the pipe.
Right.
Providing input when you can. So I'll say that. I don't know if I'd go as far to say that folks that are being investigated are the ones that are trying to change the law, but I would imagine if you are being investigated, it's probably something you'd want to do, right? You're like, all right, well, if the law doesn't affect me anymore, what are you doing? You shouldn't be investigating me. Get out of here.
There's that. This will continue to be a story that I'm sure we will be talking about for quite a while. Not specifically maybe Gemini and Genesis, but the crypto collapse, the crypto winter, all that for weeks and months to come.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about another
I'm so excited about this story.
Yeah, Frank. This is Frank. So this is a company that back in 2021 sold to JPMorgan, was acquired by JPMorgan Chase for $175 million. They were alleging that they are the Amazon of higher education. They were helping people with financial aid applications, which is a very messy process. JPMorgan acquired them thinking they had some 4.25 million accounts. Turns out they had maybe 300,000 and they fabricated most of their accounts. So now JPMorgan Chase is suing the founder of Frank. Her name is Charlie Jandis.
Whoa. Hey, Oren, let me ask you this about this Charlie Jandis. Was she featured by an organization for potentially being a rising star of some kind?
Are you alluding to the fact that she was under 30 and maybe she was one of the 30 under 30 that Forbes so notoriously writes about every year?
You don't say. So you're saying that someone in the 30 under 30 could be could be sued for potentially fraud? What is this?
Are you suggesting that Elizabeth Holmes, that Sam Bankman-Fried, that Carolyn Ellis, and now Charlie Javis were all 30 under 30?
Dare you, Oren, make these insinuations?
It's funny we were talking about this. We were talking about this before we recorded, but Jezebel has been joking about this, that now that there is this notorious convicted before 35 list that should now be written about.
It's my favorite joke is, Your Honor, my client is a 30 under 30. It's fine. I mean, my gosh, granted, listen, there's a lawsuit pending. We don't know what's true, what's not true. I get it. These are all in good, these are all jokes and good fun. But that being said, like, my gosh, guys, like, how many Forbes 30 under 30 are we going to hear stories about? Like, it's almost like the Madden curse, right? You're on the cover of Madden and right. It ruins your career. Like, if you're a Forbes 30 under 30, I'm going to have to just assume now that you've committed at least a little fraud. Like, a little bit.
I mean, that's... I will say this. If you're investing in somebody who is a 30 under 30, maybe do your due diligence twice over.
All right. You misunderstand. In 2022, it was vibes over due diligence. That's it. You gotta trust the vibes. Don't do due diligence again.
Due diligence is out, vibes are in. That's what you're saying.
Folks, you're listening to this, we're joking. We're watching the story at the backdrop of all of the other stuff we've heard about in the Netflix, Hulu, Amazon series we've watched. Again, what is being alleged is horrifying, truly fraud if it's true. That being said, you got to chuckle at it because I can't. Fiction is stranger than reality, or is not as strange as reality. I'm sorry.
One of my favorite details, though, from the story is that Javis hired a professor for $18,000 to fabricate all.
He had no idea, too, right?
He
didn't even know. He's like, yeah, whatever. Whatever, 18 grand.
What did you
cool.
think he was doing? I'm hiring you to create 4 million fake accounts or accounts. What did he think that I was doing with that?
Or if you just give me the sack of dollars in the brown sack, and it's cool. All right, I don't ask questions like that. I just no. Jokes aside, I always have to caveat this because it's pending litigation. Jokes aside, but this is truly though. If true, this is exactly what I would expect from a 2021, 2022 investment. Like we were seeing so much of it because the money was flowing so heavily, especially VC-backed investments. Things were just coming up out of nowhere. And granted, some of it was great stuff. Some of it was not so great stuff. Some of them were fantastic companies. Some of them were horrible companies. So it'll definitely be, this is a lawsuit we'll be monitoring. If only we can make at least a couple more jokes.
Anything for the bit.
Anything for the bit.
All right. Well, last major story here is we're still talking about Elon Musk, so ring that bell, and his acquisition of Twitter. Insofar as Twitter is still facing a class action suit by several people who claim that their severance package was not followed through on. However, a U.S. district judge in San Francisco has at least ordered that 5 of the people in the class action suit drop the suit in favor of private arbitration because that's the contract that they signed when they were hired.
Exactly.
It's not clear if he's going to order for the entire case to be dismissed because some of the people in the class action opted out of arbitration, but as of right now, Twitter has what looks to be 5 less claims it has to deal with in court.
It's interesting. I'm not privy to their employment agreements. I'm not privy to the arbitration agreements. But this is fairly common now to see these arbitration. You opt in and you elect to arbitrate your claims. So it's not incredibly surprising. I think what is surprising is the fact that we've seen tweets about the severance. Right? Like, oh, we're going to pay the severance. And then I see folks that did not get paid their severance tweet back through Twitter, which is surreal to watch. It's like, I never got paid. It's been months and months and months. So it's certainly something else. I mean, I think this is also interesting because we're probably going to see other claims. And I think some stuff has probably already been filed. If it hasn't been, it's inevitable for rents not being paid at Twitter, or at least a sub office or a different office. I don't believe it was the main office.
Multiple offices.
Yeah, other
Kuala
obligations.
Lumpur, Dublin, San Francisco. Yeah.
So I expect to see other kinds of litigation stemming from all this. And I mean, needless to say, it's a mess. It's a mess.
And it's not just rent obligations. It's also other employment law violations. There are people who are alleging that there was gender discrimination in the layoffs, stuff like that. So it's plenty of headaches for all involved.
Not for the lawyers. Not for the lawyer.
Which is something to note. I actually wanted to bring that up because we've talked about, that the Silicon Valley specifically is facing this big downturn, and what do you do if you're a lawyer in that space? Here's something to look into, employment law.
I think that's actually, jokes aside, I think it's a very fair point, and it's something that at Lawtrades we've talked about it briefly. We've done some talks on it. I think we did a LinkedIn Live recently. There are certain types of practice areas we think are insulated from the downturn. Employment law is definitely one of them. Definitely one of them. You will definitely have a lot of employment-related claims. Also, commercial litigation, I think, will still be pretty good. But if you're right, if you're trying to pivot slightly, and you at least have an understanding of employment law, learn more, go to class, take CLEs, try to transition into that practice, or at least somewhat, right, to survive. Really fulfilling work, either on the employer side or on the employee side. So I couldn't agree with you more, Warren. That is definitely some good advice.
Right, and that also kind of dovetails with a lot of the unionization stuff that we've been seeing and all that. So it's kind of like a wide array of cases and things that you can take on now.
I couldn't agree more. That was really insightful, man. Thanks.
Well, let's take it a step further and connect this to one of the smaller stories we're covering this week. It turns out that laid off tech workers, are increasingly becoming victims of scam bots and scammers to the tune of, in Q1 of 2022 alone, so this time last year, $75 million worth of scams were perpetrated against laid off tech workers.
Come on, that sucks. So what I would think is happening here is you've just been laid off. There's this massive riff, right? And you're vulnerable. Really, you're vulnerable because it's I'm trying to find my next spot. It was potentially unforeseen. For certain companies, it really was. And you get these bots that are maybe they're saying, hey, we've got this job that you can apply for, or maybe we have this or we have that. And if you just lost your massive source of income, especially if you live in California where things are a bit more expensive, in the Bay Area especially, you may fall for it. You may be like, oh, maybe this is, somebody trying to help me out. They saw all the tech layoffs, and you get scammed. That's brutal. That sucks.
Yeah. And you're desperate, like you were saying. You're kind of blinded by your desperation. I have to make my mortgage payment. I have to my
kids got to eat.
My student debt. Exactly. Yeah. So it's pretty grim. It's pretty grim to see that, but something to look out for.
People suck, man. People suck. Come on, stop being horrible and scamming people. Just leave everyone alone.
All right, well, last story, we'll kind of end on an up note here. Last small story here is the Copyright Claims Board, which started back in June 2022, was kind of an experiment, was seeing how copyright claims could be brought to kind of especially smaller claims, could be brought to a new venue. Turns out it's a success. Turns out that this, cool. I guess it's almost 300 claims have been brought to the venue since June. Most of them have to do with visual art claims, sculptors, artists, that sort of thing. And it's going quite well. So it's nice to see.
Cool. That is really cool. That is a very innovative. I think that's something that a lot of the courts talk about. Is there ways that we can adjudicate certain kinds of claims in a more efficient manner? Because there are some courts that are so backlogged that it's really hard to see justice, right? And this, in the IP realm, this is really cool. I've done small claims outside of IP, and it's fast. Generally speaking, it's very fast and efficient. It gets things done. So that's awesome. I love that this is working. Hopefully I never have to adjudicate something in this courtroom. But if I do, at least it's fast. That's cool. So that's cool. Well,
it's good to see.
Good. I'm glad we ended on a high note here. I thought we were going to end with the Frank story, and that would be the high note. But this is okay. This is there
I'm sure we'll return to that soon enough. But for now, there's our high note. Well, Matt, thanks as always for talking me through this, and thanks for everyone who's listening.
Yeah. See you next week, guys.
See you next week.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out also on LinkedIn and Twitter to keep up to speed with what we're doing. Catch you on the next one.